Welcome back to Board and Savior, and good news. We've got a Board and Savior classic for you today, namely reviewing a game that came out years ago. Yes, I'm a little late to the party, but that's exactly when the cool kids show up. Monumental has a lot of things. Deck building, area control, civilization building, a weird 3x3 grid where you tap cards in one row and one column, and it's basically the coolest mechanism in any game ever. No opinions yet. Bad Ben. Sorry. Let's start with the pitch. Monumental is a 2020 game from Funforge, designed by Matthew Dunstan. It was originally Kickstarted, and now it's available in retail. This is the more easily findable and also cheaper version, the one with cardboard tokens instead of miniatures, but more on that later. In Monumental, you'll take control of an enterprising civilization and jockey for position amongst other historical legends. You'll develop technologically, militarily, culturally, and wonderfully. You'll build wonders. The game plays 1 to 4 players, takes about an hour and a half to 2 hours, and is a pretty medium-weight game. This game is set up for 2 players, which is, for my money, my favorite way to play. There's also this little map setup booklet, which gives you a couple different layouts depending on your player count, which vary from basic to tricky and weird. Monumental may be a deck building game, but you don't draw a hand of cards. Instead, you set up 9 cards from your deck in this little 3x3 grid. You don't get to choose where the cards go, you'll just draw them and put them out left to right, top to bottom. On your turn, you'll choose 1 row and 1 column from this grid, meaning you'll be activating 5 cards total. Whichever cards you activate, you'll gain the associated resources or effects. If I activate this row and this column, I'd gain 2 production, used to buy building cards, 1 science, to buy knowledge cards, and 2 military, used to move units on the map. The game gives you these little chits to track the resources that you've earned this turn, and here's the thing. You better use them this turn, or they're freaking gone. Not the same thing with gold. Gold is a wild resource you can use for military or production or science, and this you can keep in your inventory from round to round. You can hold on to it. These little guys that you get when you tap your cards, you better use them, because if you don't, they're gone. As the saying goes, you snooze, you lose, so choose to use. So I have 2 production, 1 science, and 1 military. With those 2 production, I can buy this card. It is an upgraded version of like your base military cards in your deck. They all have a value of 1. This one has a value of 2. Nice. That is great. Now, you are familiar with deck building games, and you know that these cards, they always go into your freaking discard pile. You gotta wait for your deck to run out, and then you shuffle it up, and maybe you'll draw into this. Not the case here in Monumental. Not to like blow your mind or anything, but this does not go into your discard pile. This goes face down onto your deck. Yeah, that means that every single time you buy a card, it's gonna be the next card that you play. It's great. Okay, production is spent. I have 1 science and 2 military left. I can't afford any of the cards that cost science, and I don't have any wild gold resources, so I think I'm out of luck there. But with these 2 military resources, I can move 2 of my units on the board. Now, there's a weird little distinction here, because military units and explorers are not the same thing. These circle guys are soldiers, and the big circle guy is the warlord, your faction leader. These square guys are explorers, and they're a separate thing, but they do also move using military. It's a little weird, but not too hard to get used to. When you move your fighty units with military, you need to make sure that you're actually allowed to enter the hex, which is called a province, that you're trying to enter. Basically, count up the number of units you have. In this case, I'm moving 2, so 2. Then the province you're moving into has to have a defense value of that number or lower. This hex has a defense value of 1 and has 2 barbarians in it for a total defense of 3. I can't go there. But this hex has a defense of 0 and 2 barbarians for a total of 2. For any math geniuses in the audience, you'll note that I can go here. I pay the military, move the units, and take this barbarian token for a sweet bonus. It works almost the same when attacking an opponent's hex. You still need to look at the hex's defense value and how many units are there, but just remember that the soldiers, like the base soldiers, add 1 defense, the warlord adds 2 defense, and outposts add 3. And instead of claiming the opposing units for a bonus, you just send them back to your opponent's starting capital tile. The real bonuses are the friends we pissed off along the way. One interesting thing about combat in this game is that distance doesn't really matter. As long as the tile you're attacking is connected to others in your control, you can take 1 unit from anywhere on the board and move it for just 1 military resource. And wonder cards. Expensive. So expensive that you actually need to pay for them twice? You pay the first value to reserve the wonder card, and then the second to actually add it to your deck. However, these cards are pretty powerful, and they'll add a defense bonus to one of your hexes. Whenever you build a wonder card, you'll take its tile, stick it onto one of your provinces, and it will give it a permanent +2 defense bonus for the rest of the game. Now, last thing before we transition into my thoughts, how do I win it? Once this development deck is empty and all the players have taken a final turn, you'll do some classic scoring stuff. You'll get points for every province you control, all of the knowledge and wonder cards that are completed and in your deck, and points for every cultural policy that you have adopted. Then you'll get a couple extra points if you're the player with the most of those things, and then if you're the player with the most points overall, you win. Get bent, golf. That's definitely not everything. You probably said, what the hell is a cultural policy? But you now have enough of a foundation that we can move on over to Opinion Land. Here in Opinion Land, facts are nothing but a fiction. You may say that water always freezes at 32 degrees Fahrenheit, but I say that's just like your opinion, man. First up, and I don't know why this is true, but it is, getting your resources by tapping the cards in the rows and columns of a 3x3 grid is my favorite mechanism in any game ever. It is not particularly thematic, I don't think it's very intuitive, but genuinely, I decided to buy the game because of that mechanic. Because who needs thematic or intuitive gameplay when you have something that's just so satisfying? You get this incredible cost-benefit thing. Which row and column combination is the best? What's going to yield the most stuff for you? But then you actually figure that out, and then you go, wait a second, I was just planning on buying that knowledge card, which costs science, but the most efficient route is going for production. What do I do here? Or maybe there's an effect that you want to activate in one row, but it requires you to activate a suboptimal column. What do you do? Is it better to activate that suboptimal column, get that good effect, or to activate the better column and get the better resources that come along with it? Every turn starts with a truly kick-ass choice, and the choices only get more and more interesting as the game goes on. In fact, it's so good that I wonder if we can't sprinkle a little extra home-brewed goodness on top. What happens if we keep everything else the same, but we use a 4x4 grid, huh? So we tap, 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 and then tap, tap, tap. Oh, mama. Let's also talk about knowledge cards. Building cards, they are self-explanatory. You draw one of these, you put it into the next available slot in your grid. But if you draw a knowledge card, you put it into the next open slot in your grid, and then put your next non-knowledge card on top of it. You get to activate both cards when you choose that row or column. In another game, it wouldn't matter whether you bought the knowledge card or the building card first, since they're all going to get shuffled up before you play them. Here, you probably want to buy the building card first and then the knowledge card, because this way you know what the knowledge card is attaching to and therefore improving. There are so many sweet little decisions in this game, and that is truly one of my great loves in board gaming. What's that? Why, it's the critical arm. The critical arm. Critical alarm. Something. Just as I was flabbergasted at the fantasticity of this grid mechanism, I am equally appalled at this rulebook, specifically the back of it. Let me tell you a few things that you need to remember in this game. There are 9 possible actions that you can take on your turn. So many that I literally need my script up here to remember all of them so that I can relay them to you, okay? Acquire a development or a basic building. Complete a wonder. Develop a cultural policy. Conquer a province. Move military. Construct an outpost. Play explorers. Use the activated effect of a card in your grid or from your cultural policy. And make scientific progress. Also, remember that your units give 1 military strength, but defending opposing units give 1 strength if they are soldiers, 2 if they're a warlord, and 3 if they are an outpost. Also, remember to discard cards from this development row if no one bought any. Also, remember that you can empty your capital hex, but none of your province hexes of your units. Also, remember what archive, copy, reinforce, and destroy mean. I ask you this. Do you think a little quick reference would have been a better use for the back of this rulebook than an ad for Tokaido? What really blows my mind is how quick references on the backs of rulebooks is just the most standard, expected thing in board gaming at this point. This is not a situation where like, oh, only a couple of games do this, we're just being like the other ones that don't. No. Pretty much every single game does this, and why? Because it's so helpful. I've played this game a bunch of times, and I still forget some of the 9 actions that you can take on your turns because there are 9 of them. I don't know if you can tell, but I think this is a pretty egregious miss, and the fact that they put a little salt in the wound by making the back not like artwork or something, but an ad, oof. Other than that, I don't really have any huge problems with the game. Combat is fine. It's a little bit more functional than fun, since it's really just basic addition. When you're duking it out with barbarians, it's not the end of the world, but when you get to the end of the game and you're bumping into other players, it feels a little lacking. Plus, the last player to go before endgame scoring, they've got a pretty big combat advantage. If that player can manage to have a combat-focused turn, which, let's be honest, you usually can by the end of the game, they can completely change the board state, and since they're the last player to go, no one has a chance to change anything back. The game also includes just 1 extra wonder per era, which adds like no real variety to the game, like 1% variety maybe, and this is an area where the game could really use a little bit of variety. If you play Monumental enough, you will quickly start to realize that the cards are the same from game to game. They're shuffled up, but it's always the same cards with the exception of that 1 extra wonder per era. You can buy expansions, which mainly exist to add new civilizations to the game, but they do also add in those new era cards that I feel like this thing really needs. So you can take this con with a grain of salt if you are willing to spend a little extra money. Finally, I think there's something missing from the faction asymmetry. Each warlord has their own power, and there are unique cultural policies for every civ. But there's only 1 or 2 unique cards in all the starting decks, so no one ends up feeling that different. This could be a skill issue, but that's my hot take. You know what I like, you know what I don't, so there is only one thing left to do. My rating. Modules! Monumental has 4 of them. Do you want to fight mythological monsters? You can. Do you want to meet historical heroes? You can. Do you want to make the game longer? You can. And do you want to play the game alone? You know you can. Okay, monsters first. All you do when setting up the game is shuffle in some monster tokens with the regular barbarian tokens, and then when you invade a province, you flip the tile and it's got a monster, it shows up. You'll stick a token underneath one of the development cards depending on your player count, and every turn that token will get closer and closer to the deck. When it reaches the deck, the monster attacks, and yeah, it's bad. To defeat the monster, you send one of your explorers, and please remember it is explorers, not soldiers, as I did every single time I played with this module very incorrectly. You send them into the monster space, you fulfill the requirement on the card, and then you take the card, get rid of the monster token, and you get a victory point. My take? It's fine. Not to suck as a reviewer, but it's a mixed bag, right? I mean, you might run into a monster that just absolutely whomps you, sets you back a few turns while your opponent just happens to fight a beast that they are perfectly equipped to deal with. Or because the setup is randomized, maybe all of the monsters are just surrounding you and then, uh-oh, you're screwed. But it's variety, and if you've played a lot of Monumental, as I now have, maybe shaking things up is worth the price of possibly imbalancing things. Historical celebrities. Add them to your game to really shake things up. Actually, when I played with these, I kind of forgot they were there. How they work is they offer like a one-time bonus where after you use them, you put them back into the shop for other players to buy. The bonuses improve with heroes from later ages, but the buildings and wonders that you get in later ages are also really, really good, and these heroes don't get you any extra points, so you're getting a second shrug from me. I think I like the monsters module more than this one, even with the unbalancedness. This really just feels to me like throwing something extra in to throw something extra in. Then we've got the Renaissance cards. It is a whole new era that you can add to the deck to extend the game. I like these in solo mode, which is the only setup where I think the game could stand to be a little bit longer. With 2, 3, or 4 players, I can't imagine wanting to prolong things anymore, since combos can get quite out of control as it is. So let's talk solo mode. Monumentals is a classic automa thing where a deck of cards acts as an opposing civilization. Once you've played a little Monumental, this mode is pretty easy to beat, but I'm not complaining. It's nice to be able to play solo without needing to play two-handed, and honestly, I'm not really playing solo Monumental to feel challenged per se. I'm doing it to feel powerful, to get those crazy combos going. Finally, with those modules out of the way, my score out of 10. But wait, I teased a discussion of cardboard versus minis at the top of this video. That's fine. Discuss it, just without me. Wow. What a cross patch, right? A cross patch is a bad-tempered person. Synonyms include grouch, complainer, and curmudgeon. Even as someone with an unhealthy love for gray plastic, I must admit that adding minis to this game, it just has to clog things up. At the start of every game, your explorers, soldiers, and warlord all start in your capital hex. With cardboard, this is no problem, because you can stack cardboard on top of itself. With minis, it's a different story. On top of that, combat is nothing to write home about, so I can't imagine that adding plastic dudes makes it that much more exciting. So locking minis behind a big ol' extra payment on Kickstarter, that's fine by me, whatever. What's not fine is not delivering your game to your backers. That is not nice. That is, in fact, mighty naughty, if you ask me. Please let me know in the comments below if I got any of this wrong, but as far as I can tell, Funforge's last update on Kickstarter was in November 2023 when they said shipping is about to begin. And then, it didn't. A few dozen backers have received their games, but there are many, 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 many more who are just kind of crossing their fingers and hoping that theirs will arrive soon. It seems like some money problems on Funforge's end are holding up shipping, so I guess we'll just have to wait and see how all that plays out. Okay, man, you can come back. I'm sorry, it really is time for the rating now. Really? Yeah, go for it. Okay, awesome. Monumental has a lot. Continuous play mode! Nah, I'm just kidding. I didn't play that mode, but it supposedly reduces downtime. So if you're interested in that, you can check that out. Now you can go. That's fair. Monumental has a ton going for it. A satisfying gameplay loop, solid artwork, and tons of combo potential. And yeah, there are things here and there that I'd like to see improved, but man, that grid mechanism is so good. I am very willing to look past a lot of it. So I am going to give Monumental a score equal to the number of actions that you can take on your turn, which is... okay, I've got 8. Was there anything else? Oh, cool. Takedo's now on Steam. That's great. Yeah, so Monumental, it's going to be an 8 out of 10. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. We've done it with 4. What about 5? Make sure to like, subscribe, and let me know what you think about Monumental in the comments down below. Here we go. First the row. So far, so good. Now the column. Man, I think I really messed this thing up. I don't even... There's not like a reset switch or anything. It's just... What's that? Is that... It's standing angle, Ben. Got yourself in a little pickle, huh? Yeah. If you go to the table, you untap the last card, fingers crossed, that'll pull me back out. Are you going to make me think I can give a rating and then interrupt me with one more thing ever again? Oh, is that what this is all about? No way, man. Don't worry. That's all the time we have for this review. Come back on May 1st for my top 5 favorite games under $30. Seriously, you gotta get me. Bye.